Hey guys, Jason here, back at it again. We all know that Duel Masters Plays introduced some balancing changes in comparison to the TCG, so in this video I'm going to be going over those changes card for card, and I'll also be providing my quick analysis on each of them. Starting things off, some changes to the basic mechanics. It looks like a lot of creature effects that were previously optional have now been made mandatory. So that's card draw, that's creature untapping itself, and that's also a creature destroying an opponent's creature. Now, I don't think these changes are that bad because the whole reason we play creatures with these effects are to get these effects off anyway. But naturally, having the option to do something is better than having no option at all, right? So I'm sure there are going to be some niche situations where not having the option is going to be worse. Like, for example, you're running out of cards in your deck and you summon Aquahulkus because you need an extra creature to attack or something. And then in the past, you would have had the option to draw a card. And you'd be like, you know what, I'm summoning Aquahulkus, but I'm choosing not to draw a card. And then you get that extra turn you need. Whereas now, you have to draw the card, and that could be the difference between decking out and not. I think these situations, a lot of the time, are going to be few and far between, but it's a soft nerf that I think should be acknowledged. Now with bounce effects, you still have the option to bounce, but you can only use the effects on your opponent's creatures. So Aqua Surfer can only bounce your opponent's stuff, you can't bounce your own guys. Again, don't get me wrong, most of the time you do want to be bouncing your opponent's creatures, so this change is not that bad, but you kind of lose that versatility in case you want to be a troll and reuse some of your come into play effects. Like let's say you Spiral Gate a Corile. Naturally, sending a creature to the top of your opponent's deck is a lot more devastating than sending a creature back to your opponent's hand. Now, I don't think Corile is in Duel Masters Plays, but the sentiment remains. Search is actually something that we covered in a previous video. Now, rather than being able to go through your whole deck to look for your target, you can only look at the top 3 cards of your deck. This makes it a lot worse, and I expect a lot of decks in the TCG that ran Search, I expect them to be dropping them in Duel Masters Plays, but I think it's still going to have some applications. I think what they should have done is, because the effect is so much weaker, they should have reduced the mana cost of a lot of Search cards, like let's say bring Rumbling Terrahorn down from 5 mana to 4, but that's just my 2 cents. Last but not least, the race of giant insects is now known as Gigant Insects to prevent confusion with future giant support. So when they say giant support, it's stuff like, Stratosphere Giant, Headlong Giant. I guess cards might read like, all of your giants gain plus 5,000 power. And then somebody who plays a giant insect deck will be like, hey, these guys are giants. They have giant in the race, but no. So yeah, this is a good change because it decreases ambiguity. Now let's go into the changes card for card. Starting things off, Alcadius, fan favorite. Now, Andrew told me the other day that Alcadius was meta, and I never thought I'd live to see the day. The reason behind that is because Duel Masters Plays introduced a 4-mana Angel Command blocker that allows you to draw a card when you summon it, so that sounds pretty sweet to me. Anyway, Alcadius has been reduced from 12,500 power to just 11,500 power, so that's still really big. I don't think this is going to be a major deal breaker because at this power level, you're still going to be running over most things. Maybe they made it so that if you summon him after your opponent summons Balam, like Balam can kill him now, but it should still be acknowledged that Balam coming into play will destroy Alcadius because of his effect. But I don't know. It's a soft nerf to Alcadius, but I think Alcadius is fine. Next change, Rebel Seeker of Archery gives plus 2,000 power to your light creatures only. So if we notice, in the past, Rebel gave plus 2,000 to every other light creature. Now this change makes a lot of sense to me. I think a lot of the time you play creatures like this so that your creatures can run over your opponent's guys. Now, if your opponent is trying to wall you with light blockers, you might be like, I play a Rebel to make my guys stronger. Hey, wait a minute, it makes my opponent's guys stronger too. What a waste of 7 mana. So yeah, they fixed this, and I'm very happy that they did. I assume it's going to be the same with Shadow Moon for Darkness. Mistria Sonic Guardian, draw is now restricted to when the player has 5 or less cards in their hand. So back in the day, Mysterious could get really wild. There's no limit to the number of cards you could have drawn. But then in saying that, there's also a hand limit to Duel Masters Plays now. So I guess they really wanted to nerf Mysterious. In my opinion, this does make Misrius a lot worse. I don't think he's unplayable per se, but I think it makes him a lot worse because his application is much more limited. You can't always pull off his effect, and your opponent will have additional ways to sort of play around him. Having 5 cards in your hand is definitely strong, but I think the unlimited potential of Misrius is what really gave him the edge in the past. So that's a shame that Misrius got nerfed, but I can see why they did it. Games could get too wild, and it also might have been difficult to handle for the mobile interface. Rayla Truth Enforcer. Now, this is basically Foremost. When you put this creature into the battle zone, search your deck, you may take a spell, grab it, and put it in your hand. Now, okay, so Rayla Truth Enforcer is now 5 mana, 3k. So it actually has identical stats to Rumbling Terrorhorn. In saying that, because search has been very severely nerfed, I don't know if 5 mana 3k still makes it worth it. Maybe 4 mana 3k would have been better, but that's what we got. Perhaps searching for spells is going to be a more powerful effect than searching for creatures, so maybe Rayla will still have the edge over Rumbling Terrorhorn. This is a good change. The mana cost change is good, but the nerf to search makes it sort of almost negates that. So I don't know. I don't think I would play Rayla. Last change, Diamond Cutter. Summoning Sickness is no longer ignored. So in the past, any effects that would prevent your creature from attacking, including Summoning Sickness, those were ignored. But now you can make any cheeky, I summon Bloody Skeeto, I play Diamond Cutter, speed attacker, Bloody Skeeto, you're dead. Yeah, you can't make plays like those anymore. I think this makes Diamond Cutter a lot worse. You used to have the surprise factor, like imagine being able to play like 2 1-drop blockers on the same turn as Diamond Cutter. That's like 2 extra attackers on top of the field you already have. And even then, actually, Diamond Cutter wasn't that good. We still haven't been able to figure out how to make this card broken, and now it gets nerfed in DM plays. So I don't think Diamond Cutter is going to be very playable going forward until something, a major change happens. Now let's go over water. Aqua Sniper looks like he's been buffed from 5,000 power to 6,000 power, and he's finally gained Double Breaker, so hooray for Aqua Surfer. He can finally claim to be a boss monster. Now, in saying that, Aqua Surfer was nerfed slightly by the bounce effect, so rather than being able to bounce your creatures and your opponent's creatures, like previously in the TCG, you could do some Aqua Sniper loops of sorts where you could target one of your opponent's creatures and he could target himself, and then you could reuse that effect the next turn. Naturally, it's not the most powerful effect, but it could still be pretty good sometimes. But that is completely off the table in favor of 5,000 to 6,000 and Double Breaker. I don't think this is going to matter too much in the grand scheme of things because Aqua Sniper probably doesn't have a place in Liquid People decks because he's too expensive. And if anything, he has even less of a place in controller combo-based decks. So it might look like a buff, but I don't think it's really going to increase his playability, sadly. Next change, Legendary Binor, 6 mana 7, he has gone from 6 cost to 7 cost, and his power level has been increased by 3,000, so that's quite a lot, and he also gives Unblockable to himself, so that's good. Now, on the surface, I think these changes are fine, because the trade-off between that 1 extra cost for that 3,000 power and giving himself Unblockable actually makes a difference. 8,000 is an important power level because a lot of the playable boss monsters cap at this power, so being able to run them over is a big deal. The problem is Leviathans are not a very good race, so even though on the surface Legendary Binor seems like he has made some positive changes in his life, I don't think it's going to do a whole lot for their playability. So, sorry, not sorry. Next change, Marching Motherboard. 6 mana 2k. In the past, when you put another creature that had Cyber in its race into the battle zone, you could draw a card. So, in a way, it's kind of comparable to Misrius. But now, his cost has been decreased from 6 to 4. That's good. But draw is now restricted to when the player has 5 or less cards in their hand. So, that's kind of sad. I don't think Marching Motherboard is going to see much play because of this. I feel like you're better off playing Illusionary Merfolk. Unless you get some crazy cyber virus support or something. Moving on, we have Raptorfish. When you put this creature into the battle zone, shuffle your hand into your deck and draw that many cards. So his cost has been decreased from 6 to 4. Raptorfish is not a card that has seen much play. I don't expect that to change very much unless... because I feel like most of the time you don't really want to shuffle, draw the same number of cards. You just want to draw more cards. So I don't think this is going to make much of a difference in terms of Raptorfish's play, but it's still a good change for him nonetheless. Next card, Plasma Chaser, has been slightly buffed from 4,000 to 5,000 power, so that's good. His effect is when he attacks, you may draw a card equal to the number of creatures your opponent has in the battle zone. So he can run over Bloody Skeeto. I think that's the main change. It's kind of crazy, like you trade a 6 cost creature for a 2 cost creature. But yeah, so good for Plasma Chaser. Again, I don't think he's going to see much play after this, but it's still a good change nonetheless. King Mazelin, again, slight buff. Gone from 8 mana cost to 7 mana cost. His effect is when you put him into the battle zone, choose a creature into the battle zone and bounce it. Yeah, you might as well. He's basically a boss Aqua Surfer, but I would much rather play Aqua Surfer. As I pointed out in my legendary Binor analysis, I don't think Leviathans are particularly good at this point in time. So, yeah, sorry, but King Mazelin, no go. Another change, Chaos Fish. The number of draws is now mandatory, so that's a change that we covered earlier in the video. When this creature attacks, draw a card for each of your other water creatures in the battle zone. So yeah, rather than having the option to draw it, it's now compulsory. Chaos Fish is unplayable, but it actually makes him a lot worse if if you think about it, because if you have a lot of creatures, the chance of decking yourself is much greater. I don't think it's an effect that's going to come up, but yeah, while we're just playing with hypotheticals, because we're not going to be playing Chaos Fish anyway. King Nautilus has been buffed. His cost has been decreased from 8 to 7. Yeah, Liquid People can't be blocked, and he has Double Breaker. I think if you're playing Liquid People, you might as well be playing Crystal Lancer, Crystal Paladin, any of those guys. King Nautilus, it's a good change, but yeah, not very good. Sea Slug. Sea Slug now gains Double Breaker. So 8 mana, 6k blocker with Double Breaker. This is pretty interesting. I think 8k for a vanilla creature in the grand scheme of things is not going to make Sea Slug playable, but I think you might see him have niche applications in some budget decks. I don't know. Probably not actually, but it's a funny change and it's a good change, so it's one that I don't have any problems with. Pekoton, previously an OCG exclusive card from the looks of it. His effect used to be when you put him into the field, and if your opponent has more cards in his hand than you do, you may draw a card. Now, this condition has been removed, so you can draw a card regardless. That basically turns him into Magress, and he has Cyberlord status, so that's very, very good. It seems like Pekoton is one of the best cards in the game right now, for good reason, and yeah, I don't know what else to say. This card is insane. Last guy, Tropico, 5 mana, 3k Cyberlord. This creature cannot be blocked while you have at least 2 other creatures in the battle zone. So this condition has been removed, so if you summon him by himself, he's straight up unblockable. Again, it's a positive change, but I don't think Tropico is particularly playable. So very common theme we are seeing in the water section. A lot of these changes have made these cards a lot better, but they're just not good cards in general, so I don't think it's going to do much. I don't think the buffs are going to do much in terms of their playability. Saying that, buffs are good, but yeah. Anyway, let's move on. In the next section, we have the Darkness section, starting off with fan favorite, Battle Master of Death. So the main change for him is he has gone from Double Breaker to Triple Breaker. I think this actually makes him a lot more playable because he's more likely to close games. If you think about it, you only need to swing with him twice and then 1 to Domida. So that's way better than having to swing with TCG Balam 3 times, right? Other than that, I still don't think Demon Commands are that impressive, so I don't think he's going to be very good right now. I do expect some really good Demon Commands to come out in the coming months or years for Duel Masters plays, so I think those could be the difference makers. But for now, Balam, still not too hot on him. Shadow Moon, the Cursed Shade, like Rebuild we talked about earlier, he only gives plus 2000 power to your darkness creatures. So this is a positive change. It doesn't really make sense that your guy would power up your opponent's guys, so it's something that I'm glad they fixed. Swamp Worm's cost has been decreased from 7 to 6, and that actually, I don't know if it's a huge difference. I feel like it makes him way better because, especially in like mono darkness worms decks, I think his effect is decent, but given his cost in the TCG, he's not really worth playing. Andrew was always a big proponent of Swamp Worm, but I never really liked him. But decreasing his cost from 7 to 6 makes me reconsider my position. So if it's if the numbers are strong enough to do that, I think Swamp Worm is going to be able to justify his inclusion in mono dark worms. Lost Soul has gone from 7 mana up to 8 mana, so this is a nerf. But because no other card in the game can seem to do what Lost Soul does, I think Lost Soul is still going to be extremely playable. I think Lost Soul is still going to be played in pairs in pretty much every control deck or deck with darkness, but 8 mana is going to be a slight inconvenience. But Lost Soul is still going to be very good. Oldgate Nightmare Samurai has gained blocker. So previously he was a 7 mana 6k double breaker, and now he can block. I think this might actually be a nerf in the sense. Don't get me wrong, you're not really going to see many people playing Oldgate Samurai, I don't think. But Scarlet Sky Terror is good now, and Scarlet Sky Terror is a form of blocker hate, and Oldgate just becomes another target for that. So I feel like even though it should have been a buff, it could be bad news. In other news, Crystal Paladin, I understand, is also seeing an insane amount of play, and yeah, he's going to be bouncing your 7 mana blocker, so that's not good news. So, sorry Oldgate, you are even less playable than you used to be. Mongrel Man suffered a similar nerf to Misrius. The draw is now restricted to when a player has 5 or less cards in their hand. I don't think this change is going to affect Mongrel Man's playability very much, because you're only going to be playing Mongrel Man in Mono Dark anyway, and that civilization, or that deck type rather, is very desperate for draw, so they'll just take what they can get. But it just nerfs it. It nerfs the engine as a whole, so it's kind of unfortunate for Mongrel Man, who I never thought was that good to begin with, and they made him even worse. Gamil, Knight of Hatred. Graveyard recovery is no longer restricted to a civilization, so previously you could only return a darkness creature from your graveyard to your hand, and now you can return a creature from any civ. I think that's a good change. I think that makes him a lot more versatile, but with the nerf to the search mechanic and the fact that he's just not that good in general, I don't think this is going to affect his playability very much. Last but not least, Creeping Plague. Now, as I read this, now gives Slayer to a single creature without needing to be blocked. I think they have overhauled this card. Now, yeah, so basically the purpose of Creeping Plague is to give one of your creatures Slayer until the end of the turn. Before, it had this long convoluted effect that would sort of allow you to hypothetically clear your opponent's board of blockers by crashing into them with creatures with Slayer. I think the past effect is really weird and gimmicky, and it confined itself to rush decks only. I think this new Creeping Plague is really cool because it gives you it almost gives you mana efficiency in exchange for card efficiency. So what I mean by that is you could, let's say you have a 2 mana 2k vanilla creature, and then you have Creeping Plague. So that's a total of 3 mana. Your opponent has 1 card, but it's Bolmedius. It's 7 mana 7k, but it's only 1 card. You could use this combination of 2 cards to get rid of Bolmedius, and it's very cheap. It's cheaper than Deathsmoke, it's cheaper than Terrapit, cheaper than Natural Snare. So yeah, in that regard, that's pretty good, right? I haven't really experimented with Creeping Plague, but I think this is a card with a lot of potential. In the past, Creeping Plague was niche at best, unplayable at worst. Now it's a very creative and intriguing card, so I'm very stoked about this change, and I look forward to seeing what kind of shenanigans people can pull with Creeping Plague going forward. Alright, now let's take a look at the fire section. Starting off, first change is actually a really big change to Scarlet Sky Terror. Scarlet Sky Terror has now doubled in power, so he's 8 mana 6k, and he's gained Double Breaker while retaining the blocker destruction effect. I think this is nuts. I think Scarlet Sky Terror is actually super playable now. I can see a lot of decks playing Scarlet as a 1-off or a 2-off, and I think that's really good. You also, because Scarlet is so much more playable, you also break a lot of control heavy game states where you just have like, where the control player has like a slew of blockers and there's like really no way to get past it. I think the constant threat of Scarlet Sky Terror is really good, and I'm very happy. Next change, Pyrofighter Magnus. Pyro now has gone from 3,000 to 2,000, but gets plus 1,000 during battle. So I guess while he's in your hand, he has 2,000 power, but then when he is battling, he gets 1,000 power. Because Pyro doesn't really stay on the field, I'm not quite sure what the purpose of this effect is. I mean, if it's a decrease in power, that could only be bad, but I can still see Pyro being very playable. He's just a useful card to have around in general. Next card, Todo Pipichi. It now only affects your dragons. So like the sentiment I was sharing with Shadow Moon and Rebuild, Todo Pipichi used to previously share his effect with your opponent, so it was each creature in the battle zone that had dragon in its race has speed attacker. Now only your guys get speed attacker, so that's good news. I'm not too sold on dragon decks right now, but I feel like this is a step in the right direction in terms of making dragons playable. Taking a look at Magma Rex, looks like Magma Rex is now able to destroy creatures with power 1k or less. So when Magma Rex was printed, there were no creatures in Duel Masters that had under 1k power, because creatures with power of 0 would kill themselves. So they didn't really need to word that into the text. So when Tulk the Oracle was released, Magma Rex's effect was unable to destroy it. Now that has been amended, so hooray for Magma Rex. Double Geyser Giant Rock Beast. I'm very happy about this change as well. You guys know how much I like Double Geyser. Oh, well, I'm not sure if you did, but I do like Double Geyser a lot. We have like 4 or 5 copies in the English game, and I've been trying to make a deck around him, and it just hasn't been working because he sucks. But now he's able to destroy creatures with 6,000 or less power instead of 3,000 or less, and this makes a huge difference. Double Geyser can get rid of big blockers, Double Geyser can now get rid of some bosses, and Double Geyser can get rid of a lot of mini bosses, so that's actually fantastic. Some notable creatures Double Geyser can get rid of with this effect now include Scarlet Sky Terror, it includes Crystal Paladin, it includes Bark Whip. I'm not sure if Bark Whip's in the game, but it would include Bark Whip, and it would also include Bloody Skeeto. So Double Geyser becomes a much more powerful control card, and he also becomes a much more powerful game finisher. I don't know if this is enough to make Rock Beast decks playable, but I do expect to see a lot more experimentation with Double Geyser, and this change just makes me very happy, so go Double Geyser. Mirror Force Dragon is a card that was an OCG exclusive card, and his effect, he now gets Double Breaker, and his race has been changed from Volcano Dragon to Armored Dragon. I think that's good, because I feel like Armored Dragons are much more likely to get support than Volcano Dragons. But other than that, I don't think this guy's like that good, so how big of a difference does this make in the grand scheme of things? I suppose I shouldn't say that, because we might receive some wacky Armored Dragon support that makes him super good, but for now I think he's just a vanilla card that's very forgettable, but in the future you never know. Meteosaur has also been buffed. I'm very happy about this. He has gone from 5 cost to 4 cost, so that makes him a lot more playable. Yeah, I don't know, man, it's looking good for Rock Beasts. All my boys Magma Rex, Double Geyser, and Meteosaur got buffs. But yeah, other than that, I think Meteosaur might see some niche application in control decks for the time being, but as people start to figure things out, we might find a way to make Rock Beasts very good. Valiant Warrior Exorius has gained the status of Double Breaker. I actually thought this guy had Double Breaker to begin with. 6 mana 4k, gets Power Attacker 3k, and he can attack untapped creatures. I know he costs 1 less than Gatling, but personally I just prefer Gatling. I'd rather have that 7 mana 7k flat rather than play around with Power Attacker status. Just as an example, Tornado Flame is in the game, and Tornado Flame can destroy Valiant Warrior, and your opponent is up in terms of mana efficiency there. Double Geyser also can target Valiant Warrior Exorius, whereas his effect cannot target Gatling. I don't think Valiant Warrior Exorius is very good, but this is a positive change, and I'm happy for it. Last change in the fire section, Super Explosive Volcanodon. Previously, he used to get Power Attacker 4k, so even when he was swinging for shields, he would get it, so your opponent would be like, I don't know if I want to block this. But now, he only gets 4k when attacking a creature, so if he's attacking a tapped creature, he can run over creatures up to Power 6k. It's a soft nerf, but I don't think he's very good anyway, so I don't think it really matters. Don't worry guys, we are reaching the end of the video. Finally, in the last section, the nature section, the first change we're going to go over is Innocent Hunter Blade of All has been buffed from power 1k to power 3k. Now, this is actually really good. In the TCG, Innocent Hunter is a card that I really didn't like. I thought given his cost, he was just way too weak and way too easy to get rid of. Because if you think about it, the 2k and under power threshold is just so easy to get rid of. Like, there are more cards in the game that get rid of the 2k and under power threshold than any other, which makes sense because it's the weakest. And also cost-wise, the 2k and under removal cards are the cheapest. Makes the most sense. Like, if you think about it, Crimson Hammer, 2 mana, gets rid of 2k. So I tried Innocent Hunter in a handful of evolution decks in the TCG, and I really didn't like him. He was just too easy to get rid of. He was not the easiest card to combo. Yeah, he just had no place. But now he's a mini boss of sorts, standing at 4 mana, 3k in power. I think Innocent Hunter right now is not going to see a whole lot of play because the game is new and people are still trying to figure out the meta. People are going to be playing around with the tried and true strategies, the try-hard strategies, I should say, stuff like Bolmedius or generic control decks. People are going to be trying out a lot of rush, mid-range kind of decks that focus on card efficiency. And I think a lot of gimmick evolution decks are going to fall by the wayside. But as the game, I suppose, gains in popularity and as new cards and expansions begin to be released, I think more and more people are going to see the value in Innocent Hunter because it's just a really good, stable evolution bait. It's nature, which ties in with mana acceleration, which ties in with expensive evolutions. You know, it all just works too well. So I think Innocent Hunter isn't going to see a whole lot of play now, but it is a card with an insane amount of potential going forward. So definitely keep it at the back of your mind. Next change, Bodacious Giant. He has gone from a double breaker to triple breaker. I just want to check what his effect is. So when he is tapped during your opponent's turn, if it hasn't been attacked that turn, your opponent's creatures must attack it if able. So that's kind of neat in the sense that, like, your opponent's guys have to either break your shields or they gotta crash into Bodacious Giant. But in saying that, he's 8 mana, 12k. I don't think he's particularly good. He doesn't have any insane shield burn effects or stuff like that. You don't get an extra turn. I don't think this guy's very good. So very inconsequential change, even though it's a good one. Vrima Freaky Mojo Totem now includes self-entering. So in the past, well, actually I should just go over the effect. When you put another creature into the battle zone, each beast folk in the battle zone gets plus 2k power. So Vrima could be considered a cool alternate win condition for beast folk rush decks. So rather than having to focus on summoning Fighter Dual Fang or something, you could have a whole crew of beast folks. You summon Vrima, you trigger Vrima's effect, and then all your guys are suddenly strong and you can beat down your opponent. This makes Vrima much more useful because you don't have to combo him, because really if you want to get off Vrima's effect the turn you summon him, it's going to cost at least 7 mana, right? But now, you know, it just costs 5, so that's good. It only affects your beast folk as well, and that's also a positive change. It is a sentiment that I keep echoing. It's the one with Rebuild, it's the one with Shadow Moon. You get the picture. So this is a good change. I'm not sure if Vrima is a better finisher for Beast Folk decks than Fighter Dual Fang. Sometimes I feel like you're just better off playing 4 Fighter Dual Fang. It's much more versatile, but Vrima can be seen to have its own advantages. So if you really like Beast Folk, I guess you could play around with both, even though my hunch tells me Vrima is going to fall by the wayside in those kind of decks. Bloodwing Mantis. Creatures returned from the mana zone on attack are changed from 2 to 1. So previously you had to return 2 creatures from the mana zone to your hand, now you have to only return 1. I don't think Bloodwing Mantis is particularly good anyway. I feel like you're just better off playing some Beast Folk guys like Barkwhip or Fighter Dualfang or something. So yeah, positive change, albeit inconsequential. Now Ambush Scorpion has been nerfed sadly from 3k to 2k, so he now can be targeted by stuff like Crimson Hammer and that line of spells. Yeah, this is a really unfortunate change. Fortunately, he does retain his power attacker status of 3000, so when he's swinging, he is at least 5k. But yeah, this is a really sad change. I think Ambush Scorpion was a really interesting card, and being a mini boss, you could sort of defend the 5 mana cost. But now, because he's so easy to get rid of, he's probably going to reduce in play. In the past, he was a fringe pick, and a really cool fringe pick, but now I don't think he's going to be very playable, sadly. Final change, Stormshell has been buffed from power 2k to power 3k, so that's good, I guess. But yeah, this is a card that I don't think ever saw play in the TCG, and I don't think it's going to see much play in Duel Masters plays, given the current climate. So there you have it, all of the major card-for-card changes in the first DMP expansion. You'll notice I often share the sentiment that the change is positive, albeit inconsequential. And I figure that arises as a result of the DMP developers wanting to stay true to the original effects of the cards, but also acknowledging the original design flaws, which were that they were just too weak. It's really difficult to make an extremely balanced card game, I get it, where like 80% of the cards are playable, so that's not something I expect from any card game, including DMP. In terms of balance and what decks are good, this is still base set, so I don't expect to see much variety in what's considered top tier, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I'm sure the meta is going to open up as people start figuring things out and as more sets start being released. So far, we're seeing some old favorites prove their timelessness, #Aquahulkus, and others outperform their TCG counterparts, so that's a lot of fun to see. Now, that's pretty much all I had, so thanks for sticking with me through this very long video, and if you have time, check out some of our other videos, because Andrew's really killing it on the ladder. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.